so glad that you were able to come over today. Thank you for making time for this. It really means a lot.
Thank you for inviting me. Thank you for making wonderful tea.
No.
I'm loving it.
Oh, no worries. I'm glad you like the tea. I know I lived over in Slovakia for a year. It was a big deal when you have people over to have tea. Same, is it the same thing in your house?
Yes, same in my house.
Yeah. Well, I guess, so as you know, I'm at Youngstown State right now and working on finishing a degree in pre-law. And I'm taking a communications course, as we talked about. And this homework assignment is to talk about someone who's had a pretty interesting history. And I thought about, would it be my mother? Who would it be? But then I thought about you. You came to mind, and I thought, yeah, that's the person I gotta talk to.
Oh, I'm glad that I can contribute to that. So.
Yeah, no worries. So first, as you know, this is going to be filmed. We got the camera rolling right now. Tell me about yourself. What's your first name?
My name is Vera Zhirnova.
Okay.
And I grew up in Siberia, as you know. It was a tiny village. I grew up in a family of 5. I was the youngest.
You were the youngest. Ah, okay. When you say tiny village, how big?
4,000 or 5,000 people.
4,000 or 5,000 people. Yeah. So almost the size of Lisbon, Ohio, then.
Yeah, I would say so. Mm-hmm. But it was more like spread out. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Mm-hmm.
You have been here for 9 years?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And I find it kind of interesting. We were both born kind of in a very, I wouldn't say traumatic, but frictional time in our history. Probably one of the most frictional times that 2 large countries have been in recent memory. I was born in the Reagan era, and you were born Gorbachev. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And that was a very tough time, I think, for everyone. But
I would say so.
Yeah. So, growing up in the Soviet Union, what was that like?
Well, as I remember, my childhood was pretty difficult. Like, I remember my family had to depend on itself. We would grow our own crops, and we would grow lots of them, so we could we would have food like for the winter. We would can vegetables and we would grow animals and make sure we have enough meat frozen. So my father was working as a machinist, but he would not always get a salary. So the owner would not give him salary maybe like for 2-3 months. So we would struggle sometimes financially. Yeah.
Was this before the collapse of the Soviet Union or after?
It was before, yeah. So I guess at that time, like I would say 1986, 7 were already, like those years were already giving signs to people that something is happening in the government. So
Gotcha.
And people could feel it.
Wow. So if you were already feeling it then, when the collapse took place, you had to have really felt it then.
Yes, I remember my parents were worried about what was happening in the country because all what they knew was SSSR, and that was a big tragedy when this event took place in 1991,
Mm-hmm.
August, Yeah,
What event are we?
when Gorbachev was when Yeltsin was trying to uh, took over government, and Gorbachev was how do I say that, like secluded in his summer house, and he was cut from any kind of like presidential actions. Yeah,
Wow.
so yeah, and Gorbachev's like vice president of the country, he took over the military and KGB, and put it against Gorbachev. So
How long did that last?
it was like this happened during like 3-4 days. It was 3-4 days thing, and
Yeah.
then of course there were consequences to that, and people already kind of knew that the the country will just collapse eventually. Yeah.
So
And that this is what happened later in December, in December 1991. So that's when Soviet collapsed, and Russian Federation was rising, and flags were changed.
so that was a very significant time, but also sounds like a very scary one because you don't know what's to come. Would you say that's the case? Was the case?
Yes, because people were relying on government. Like free education was free, medication was like free. So basically, when Soviet Union collapsed, people didn't know what to expect from new government. So yeah, that was very unstable ground for Russian people.
So your father still worked knowing that he might not get a paycheck.
Yes, I mean he didn't have a choice because he had family to feed, and but he was a very hardworking man, so he would work for food sometimes. So tiny village, and people would just give each other things. Some like if a person had too much. I don't know, too many products of potatoes, then he would pay with potatoes. It's like a barter thing.
Okay, so it became a new currency at that point.
Yes,
Okay.
currency. That's right. That's right. Yeah, I remember once my father brought home, like he did some job for a person, and this person brought us a very large box of ice cream.
Really?
Yes, I don't know where he got it, but it was it felt like a very big holiday to me.
A very big holiday. Yeah,
Yeah,
that probably got your mind off of things
Yeah,
for a little
yeah,
bit.
yes,
Yeah.
yes, for
Oh, wow,
sure.
wow.
Mhm.
When things got settled, and obviously Gorbachev, I believe he's still alive today.
Yes, he's very old. I believe he's in his 90s now, or late 80s.
I think he just had a birthday, in fact. Yeah,
Really?
yeah, in March.
Wow, wonderful.
Still alive, yeah. And who was the president that took over? That was Yeltsin.
Yeltsin, yes.
Yeltsin. Yeah. That was probably a very trying time to get everything stabilized at that point.
Yes.
I feel like when you watch a lot of action movies, these back in those times, it was always something America versus Russia, or
Yes, and honestly, I can like spot the same philosophy in nowadays movies. I don't know, like Russians always bad guys.
was not the case. It's certainly not the case. Yeah.
Yes, but cinematography certainly has its own idea about Russians.
Well, I feel as though Russian culture is very unique and very beautiful in a lot of ways. Are there a lot of traditions and things that take place in Russia? Was that something that was there a tradition that's very special in Russia?
Well, I guess that so many traditions were affected by Soviet Union because before Soviet Union was built, Russian people had more like traditions, like authentic traditions, and then Soviet Union like put the end to so many traditions, like church wasn't popular during Soviet Union.
By
So
choice or
no, by government's rules. So yes, and my parents were not religious because of that, and my grandmother was a little bit religious, but again, Soviet Union affected that part of um, people's life.
so they wanted a mold essentially. It would they wanted everything to be the same.
Yes, yes, yes. Mm-hmm.
I remember watching it was actually a holiday movie. I can't think of the name. Maybe you will. I think it's kind of popular in Russia, where a gentleman gets really drunk on Christmas or New Year's Eve.
So, irony of faith.
Irony of faith.
Yeah, I think this is how I would call it.
Yeah.
That's how it sounds in Russian.
And I don't know if this is true, so I have to ask. So you've watched this movie?
Mm-hmm. Of course, every year. And that you can call that one of the Russian traditions, because that's a very traditional Russian movie.
Well, they have the iron and sickle right there, a hammer and sickle, I should say, before the movie even starts. So, okay. One thing I wanted to ask, because I wasn't even going to ask this question, but after you talked about church and kind of like maybe a mold. So this guy gets severely drunk, winds up going to, he might have been in Moscow, I think he was going to St. Petersburg, maybe? And he wasn't supposed to go, it was his other friend. Yeah. Because they all got drunkered up together. And he gets to the airport, and he gives him his address and where he lives, and the guy takes him to the very address that he requested, even though he was in a different city.
Yeah, it's pretty much during Soviet Union, they wanted to like, how do I say, like customize like cities that they would look the same to each other. So same architecture, same name of streets. There would be Lenin's streets in every city, the Stroiteley street, every city. So yes, very standard.
Very, very standard. Very, very cut and dry. This is what you're getting.
Yes.
This is what's happening. So that would kill a lot of tradition then, if they wanted everything. Nothing was unique at that point. Everything was the same. Yes,
but some traditional holidays were preserved, like celebrating New Year's and International Women's Day always were celebrated. So, but just I would say religious holidays were just all gone.
Gotcha.
Yeah, unless you would live in a very small village like I did, because villagers were tempted to keep old traditions that their grandfathers and grandmothers would follow. Yeah.
Do you think you benefited from living in a village opposed to the city during that transitional phase?
Yes, definitely. I think spiritually and financially as well, because during last years of Soviet Union, and especially like first time after Soviet Union crashed, people in the cities were struggling of deficit of food and products. Like um, would they would have hard time to buy food at the store. So I remember my parents would send boxes of essential products to relatives who would live in the city. Yeah, so they wouldn't have to stay in those long lines to get bread or meat. Yeah, very basic
Wow.
food. Yeah.
Wow. I find myself and everyone who's born in America very fortunate from not having to go through that, but I think that sometimes we forget that could happen at any time. You have to have the right people in place, otherwise you might find yourself in a problematic situation. So when going through that, what did you want to do with your life? Obviously, you're here now. You've been here for 9 years in the United States, and I think you mentioned to me that you got your citizenship.
Yes, I did.
So,
2.5 years ago.
Awesome.
Approximately.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So from Russian descent, but American. A citizen of the United States. My grandmother came over from Poland, and that was a big deal, for my family.
Well, it's interesting that I think relatives on my mother's side also came from Poland.
Really?
Yes.
How so? How so?
I think my mother's grandmother lived in Poland, and she was only 4 years old when Stalin repressed her parents and sent her and her friend to a labor camp in Siberia.
Really?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you are here because of a Siberian, or because of a labor camp from Stalin, essentially.
Apparently, yeah. Well, during my childhood, it felt like a labor camp of some sort.
Oh, yeah.
But it was not as hard, obviously, as for my grandmother. I'm sure. I cannot imagine what they went through. So.
Wow.
And then World War II happened, so yeah, it was so much on their plate.
Wow, I can't even imagine that, and that's why I wanted to have this interview, because again, I just find this so intriguing. You don't get to meet someone all the time who is going through that transitional phase, and that's just monumentous. So after you were done with, well, not you, but after Russia was kind of back up on its feet, and you grew up in this new government, was it new or was it more of the same?
It was different. So it was different, and so people didn't know what to do, and lots of crime took place. So those like mafia organizations started to create, and there was a new thing. It's called racket. So basically, those mafia guys would just come to businesses and come to stores and ask for money, like for the cut, just to just to keep those like people paying them, or if
Or
not,
else.
if not, they would just I don't know, hurt their families, kill them. Yeah, so there are movies about that as well.
Wow.
So I will
Okay.
recommend it to you
Yeah,
as
please.
well.
I'd like to.
Yeah.
So, did you have a when you decided you went to college in Russia? Did you? And what did you study?
I went to nursing school.
Nursing school.
Mm-hmm.
So I had a chance to go into a hospital while I lived in Slovakia,
Mm-hmm.
and it was different. It was different. Slovakia at that time, it was kind of a part of the entire communist setup at that in this hospital. This hospital was in the era of what was. So you had a lot of these older communist buildings. Is this where these hospitals resided?
Yes. Everything in hospitals like were preserved from communist area, and as soon as you walk into a hospital, you can certainly tell like there are very few hospitals that have been updated. Yeah, I wish that new government would put more thought into maintaining hospitals or building new hospitals. Yeah, so I feel like that that has to be changed for sure.
So you're telling me it's not like George Clooney in the show ER where he's walking around with that great hair and there's all kind there was not.
No, not even close.
It was very difficult.
Yes.
To work there.
Yes, very difficult. We always would have a deficit of PPE. Like we would have to buy our own masks and our own gloves to work with patients. Yeah. So.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, that's.
And I actually remember working with patients who had tuberculosis, and because there were not enough space for them in like how do they say, like infectious
Disease in rooms.
Yes,
Infectious disease rooms.
Yeah, they would just put those patients, the regular patients. So
oh
yeah, so at that time I thought like so many like beliefs that I had in my mind of being a nurse changed while I was working at this hospital. So, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you are that kind of changed your whole path. I mean, it seems like there were a lot of different things that transpired from your very early years to your teens and 20s.
Definitely.
And that has formed you who you are today in your 30s. This is phenomenal. I have to tell you, I did not know that it was like that. I mean, I've seen it. I've never talked to someone personally who went through something that is in our history books today. We talk about it, but we only talk about what the U.S. really talked about. There might be a paragraph of what happened over to those in Russia. So being able to talk to you today and about that was it's been life-changing. I mean, honestly, I'm so glad we were able to do this today. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It was such a pleasure talking to you and sharing my history. I got very sentimental.
Yeah.
Yes,
Okay.
like all these memories, coming back, and it's wonderful. Thank you.
Thanks again. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.